And so that, how do we budget for these new initiatives? How do we budget for this operational expense versus CapEx? How are you guys working with clients and customers today on setting these budgets in place? I know it can be hard. I've had those same conversations where it's like, we don't know, we have this initiative, we don't know how much it costs. And once we figure out how much it costs, that initiative suddenly isn't going to happen anymore.
Yeah. So we talked about hardware refreshes, software licenses, warranties, new initiatives, like, projects that we want to do to address efficiency issues on the support side. So we have sort of this stack of potential things that we need to budget for the next following year. So how do you go about doing that, right? So we have a lot of industry experience, so that we have kind of a ballpark idea of what some of these initiatives might look like. So oftentimes we'll come down with this list of like, here's our required things that we have to do. Like, say we have to replace a server because it's 5 years old. There's no choice on that. We have to replace this one. Here are some nice to have initiatives, and we may have some wish list items, like say, these are things that we would love to do, but they're certainly not a requirement. And then once we have this list, we start marking some budget dollars against that. Maybe it's a $10,000 initiative or a $20,000 initiative. One of the things that we like to do is come up with a sort of ballpark figure, and then simply add 20% to that figure, because who knows what that number might be. And it's always good to budget high, and later down the next few months, if we actually do this initiative and it comes in lower, then you have the budget dollars to do it. So always budget high.
It's a fine balance though. You budget too high and then you don't do the initiative because it's going to cost this much. Yeah. Like it's getting within the Ryan Lakin patented 20% buffer of either direction.
I agree with that. I do this.
I mean, you have to go within this range, but you don't want to budget so high that these initiatives don't happen at all for the business. And some of these can be game changing, whether, and we're talking about just infrastructure, but new software, new ERP, new solutions that take the business in a new direction. Those are all things that, if it's going to come in at $250,000, maybe they don't do, but if it's $100,000, maybe that does really spark a whole new business or service line for these organizations. Dan, anything to add to these, how you go through this budget process, or how you're looking at the future for your client base?
Yeah, as a super zoomed out version of it, Patrick said now a couple times the same things that I do, and we kind of obviously have the same job.
We all try to do it the same way.
We do at IronEdge. We kind of all meet on it, and we all have sort of our planning sessions on how to address this with our clients. But super zoomed out, I do exactly what Patrick does, which I look at anything that needs to be refreshed from a hardware perspective, anything that needs to be refreshed from a service perspective, and then any potential projects. And what guides those decisions and the way I address all of those is compliance, security, and anything that I've previously talked to the client about. And then I gather all that together, and oftentimes I'll present total numbers, and I'll also be able to break down per month what the estimated spend would be. So sometimes people like that, but really I get all that together, and then I'll meet with a client sort of in a pre-meeting before we meet with any other stakeholders and go, here's what we put together from the IronEdge side. What do you think? And the client will sit there with me, and we'll kind of, change things around, add things, take things out, move things around the calendar. And oftentimes then my client point of contact will say, this is great. This is exactly what I need. And then probably half the time I go in with the client contact to the stakeholder meeting, and I say, okay, here's what we put together. I explain it. The client point of contact explains it. And then it's normally, when we've gone through all that effort, it is approved. And that's kind of guides IronEdge's focus and my focus for the next 1 to 3 years, definitely the next 1 year. But that really sets our operational plan from an IT perspective for the next 12 months as soon as that's approved. It's really, really terrific. And I believe what's been reflected back to me is our clients value that very, very much. And it's a differentiator between us and our peers.
Yeah, creating that timeline is critical, because it's expectation management, which I think I know has been a core tenet of our organization since founding, but a lot of IT service providers don't really consider that having this timeline, having this expectation management of spend is important to their customer.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, nobody likes that call going, hey, by the way, your warranty renewal is up and it's $27,000 and you weren't planning on it that year.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, I just bought this 3 years ago. It's like, yeah, well, it's been 3 years and now the warranty needs to be renewed. Like, having those conversations early and often, I think, is a critical component for any mature organization.
Agreed.
Yeah, and to Dan's point, like once you kind of go back and forth on working through the initiatives and budgets, and you finally have this sort of blessed budget approval list, then at that point it comes back to us, and we start plotting it on the next 12 to 24 months, right? So if we're doing a 12-month budget and we have this budget list of all the initiatives, at that point we'll start plotting them into what the next year looks like. Is it a first, second, third, fourth quarter initiative? Do we want to do those specifically to certain months, and start outlining the next year with those approved budgets on how and when those are going to be executed for the next 12 months. And really beyond 12 months, you might have some larger initiatives that kind of are less defined, but we know we're going to be doing those in year 2 or 3. We still have those kind of on the horizon, but they may not be very well defined. They may just have like we know we need to do that in 24 months. It'll probably be X amount of dollars. But we know that we actually have beyond 12 months, somewhat of a roadmap of what needs to get done for the organization.
Well, it gets really hard to look out beyond that. I mean, if
Yeah.
anything we've learned over the last 12 months is inflation. Anything we budgeted over a year ago, out the window by 10 to 20%. I mean, thank God for the Ryan Lake and patented 20% buffer. But at the same time, I mean, it's shocking what pricing and cost and everything that's just
Or availability for that matter.
availability, having to pivot last minute. It has been a real interesting challenge for not only our clients' budgets, but for us to be able to supply the solution.